we were so big, the bubble, and we were so high, indicating that our asset growth is big and the rate of asset growth is the fastest in the world, which makes sense because we were issuing debt papers like nobody's business. The very definition of focus is to discard all the other distractions and go forward. Itu konsep fokus. Kalau you kata, oh tak, sebenarnya I fokus yang ini. You are generalizing everything. You're not focusing at all.
Yep.
You ada dua, so it's in the interest of the LTI to demand that logo from us so that we green light you guys. It is also in the interest of our scholars to look for the logo because we have done the due diligence of the LTI. So that you tak payah nak fikir that due diligence part already. You just tengok yang mana ada LT logo, jalan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Ramadan Karim. This is an honor for us to have the CEO of Yayasan Peneraju, Cik Ibrahim Sani with us today. Semoga session ini yang menjalankan program-program yang berkaitan dengan very asas podcast yang bercerita tentang very basic, very introduction, very principle. So I think this is a good opportunity for us that when Yayasan Peneraju led by Cik Ibrahim Sani going for the new, I would say YP 2.0 or 3.0 for that matter, boleh bercerita tentang his journey, his involvement dengan komitmen dengan Yayasan Peneraju sekarang, dan juga maybe his hope and also wishes for the stakeholders in talent development dekat Malaysia yang akan meneruskan ataupun support all talent development talent initiative dekat Malaysia. Alright, so bersama kita akan pecahkan session kita kepada 3 very casual discussion, relax, Malay, English, non-Arabic, no French. I know you can speak very well in all that, faham, but mungkin ini adalah juga lanjutan daripada your last podcast dengan Dr. Ong Kian Ming, bercerita tentang your journey and everything, but maybe the reaching of that podcast tak sampai kepada orang-orang yang pengamal syariah, tak sampai kepada Islamic Finance Fraternity. So let's take this opportunity to share more focus on Islamic finance, targeting syariah or Islamic finance fraternity. Okay? Bismillah.
Baik, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I feel honoured and humbled to be invited into Asas Podcast. The podcast yang kita buat kemarin dengan On Coming, it was actually quite a gruesome and grueling podcast.
Yes.
And then thinking back, I was never interviewed in that manner or interrogated in that manner. And then my friend told me, remember dia ni ex-PAC member dulu, si Ong Kian Ming ni.
Yeah.
Padan soalan-soalan dia padu. And I did tell Kian Ming that as an ex-MP, he was one of the best interviewers I've ever had. Yeah. Sebab cara dia tanya tu memang investigative punya level, and I like that one.
Yeah.
Tapi memang betul, there's a lot of things that can be said but was not said because banyak sangat dia compact sangat.
Betul.
But one of the reasons why I wanted to have a podcast with you is because dia cover macam you bilang tadi, everything is basic, everything is back to principle.
Correct.
About 10 years ago, I was attending a very regimented and religious program by the former mufti of Australia. Dan dia selalu ejek dia punya classroom dia. Classroom dia semua level-level kita lah, yang 40 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old, semua pacik-pacik semua. And dia selalu ejek lah. Dia kata dia punya kitab Ihya Ulumuddin, Al-Ghazali. And then dia kata, aku ni ngajak usul fiqh dekat korang. Korang yang nak. Tapi kita nak sembang pasal usul fiqh pun kau tak tahu, kau nak cerita pasal usul fiqh. Lepas tu dia cerita lah, ni macam contohnya macam nak buat tax returns, padahal nak tambah apa hitung tolak pun tak reti lagi. But of course he said that in jest, but every time we covered the Ihya Ulumuddin sama ada kitab 1 sampai 4, he falls back to basic. He falls back to the principle, because interpretation of the principle is actually quite more quite less important than knowing the principles itself. So that's why this podcast is actually quite crucial. It's about to cover the most basic items.
Okay, so I'm sure along the way, masa you pick up your accounting, then you went for your chartered, you masuk Ion Bank. I know I read your profile, tapi tak nak baca lah, panjang lah, baca tu habis. Section ni semua about your profile je. But I'm sure masa you started Islamic Finance, you masuk Ion Bank, you masuk Hong Leong, you masuk CIMB, you went to Bahrain, you went to London, then you come back and handle other operation, went to retail. What was your challenges? Having an accounting background ni, technical background, you nak drive Islamic Finance, you know that the product will cater for Muslim, you know that you also have Syariah guilty or clear mind with you.
Sebab my GPA wasn't that great. It wasn't. I keep on saying this because not many people that have great CGPAs think that there is a life for them. I think that is very clear. I think we always say that C students are always owners of the businesses and A students work for them. Biasa kita cakap macam tu. But for me, I felt that was more true than most. Sebab most of my friends got a job, Big Four, normal accounting firm and so on. And then I did not have a job. And I was doing door-to-door delivery because Haji Shahrin Lau, the the Muslim Chinese restaurant, wanted distribution and I needed a kitchen, senang kata. So we were saling compatible. We created a company, just the two of us, Haji Shahrin and myself. And it was a simple setup. There was a split between profit sharing, and then there was a very straightforward akad between the two of us. Which is, to me, that was a very I put it in practice into what I have learned. So from UIA, we always had that element of Islamic finance, Islamic principle, Islamic worldview. And for me, it was nothing more than a handshake and a good trust between the two of us. And we did that for over a year. And then Haji Shahrin, dia kena scam banyak dengan partners. Tapi bila I tanya, so are you not number one, increasing your legal appetite? Number two, reducing your risk appetite. Dia kata, look, I go into the business with a clear faith. If people nak con, itu hal diorang. What I do is I deliver my end. So that was my very first lesson into putting Islamic finance into practice. Because on one hand, you go with a clear mind in terms of what you want to achieve, at least commercially. And number two, you go with the faith that if you are going to be conned, so be it, because this is at your end. This is not at your end. This is on the partner's end. So that counter reciprocal responsibility to discharge your duty was seen firsthand. And then, of course, the baby came along. In the lift just now, I was mentioning to you, my child, 18 tahun dah. She just arrived into our household and I started panicking. It was not a good feeling because I didn't have a steady job. Wife was actually making the money because the doctor. So she had a steady income. Tapi as a houseman, gaji dia 1,800 masa tu. Can you imagine? And kita duduk dekat, 2008, 2007, 2008. And it was really awful for us because we stayed at our house. Masa tu, the house was loaned to us from her parents, but we had to manage the monthly payment, and it was 3,000 tak silap. It was a steady so it was always macam nak mati lah bayar loan, bayar kereta, and then of course Tasca, because both of us had to find work. And so it was very tough. And then one fine day, a friend of a friend nak buat cerita sikit, a friend of a friend, dia ni law UIA, dia ada kawan yang kerja dekat CIMB Islamic time tu. He is looking for staff. Ni tak ramai nak tahu cerita ni. He is looking for staff.
Eksklusif ni. Thank you.
Ini eksklusif.
Yeah,
Kian Ming kita bagi satu eksklusif, kat sini kita bagi satu lagi eksklusif.
Okay.
Dia nak circumvent fresh staff from going through the management training program.
Oh.
So he wanted an experienced hire. So he, through his group of Islamic finance practitioners, hired other people in other banks so that in 1 year or 2 years time, they boleh absorb straight to CIMB. Sebab CIMB Islamic masa tu was riding high. I think you know this. Badli Shah was there, Shamsun was there, Muzaffar Hisham was there. These are otai Islamic finance dulu, especially for Suku. And they work together, but they are not necessarily from the same camp. So masing-masing ada friction apa semua. So it was also quite interesting to see friction between these practitioners to see how they pull off the business together. And it also dawned upon me that if you kerja sama-sama dengan kawan-kawan, you might not necessarily get the best because there's no friction, there is no competition, there is not going to be the best product out there.
Correct. Yes.
And then Arwah Ustaz Ghani was pulling it all together.
Yes.
Ustaz Ghani, as you know him very well,
Yes.
he was our Sharia internal advisor for CIMB Islamic. That was the scenario that was happening at Islamic. But I needed to get into Islamic through a very long way. Hence, Puan Fauzia Amanullah, the CEO of Ion Cap Islamic waktu tu.
Fauzia, yeah.
So she saw my CV, she said, okay, this is the kind of people that we need. Yang CV tak berapa lah, tapi at the same time the tenacity is there, personal life sorted, wife, kid. I got married at 19, so that was sorted. So she took me in. First thing that she put me in was product management. I imagine you are 20, I don't know, 2007, 23. I was 23.
Yeah.
Concept of product management tu memang foreign lah. Let's be real about it. I never knew that banks had products.
Yeah.
You imagine that way?
Yeah.
Banks had products. So I had to clear that stage first. Lepas tu, then we look at the kind of products that is needed. Sama ada retail, commercial, business, enterprise, investment. So again, then that gave me an understanding of, oh wow, there is steering, there is strata in terms of the kind of customers a bank has. Then there is another element which is leveraging. Now this is also another foreign concept for me.
Exactly.
Apa benda leveraging? Apa maksud leveraging? Dan if we do leveraging, what are pure play pula?
Yeah.
So Bank Islam, Bank Muamalat. So I felt, oh wow, this is all. I had to take all this in, and biasalah kita we hit the ground running quite literally.
Yeah.
So I had to learn all this understanding. At the same time, learn about banking products, learn about banking structure, learn about operating in Islamic bank in a non-Islamic structure. Ion Bank was not by any means or any stretch of measure of imagination pro-Muslim or pro-Islamic bank. Okay, senang kata macam tu. They are neutral. Bukan nak kata dia bangkang tak, but
Islamic friendly.
They're not friendly. They are neither Islamic friendly or Islamic unfriendly. They're rather neutral. So so that helped actually. That really helped. Kalau you anti-Islamic finance, then susah. Okay, and I have had that experience. We were trying to grow. Ni kita jump sikit lah. I had the time to grow Islamic finance in Singapore. That was not a Islamic finance friendly market. Singapore is not.
Yes.
Indonesia is neutral dulu. Now they are more. Right. But at that point in time, they was neutral. That's why it's easy to do Islamic finance dekat Indonesia, especially bila diorang dah tubuh OJK. So BI dengan OJK was split. So it's a lot easier for us to push the banking products there. But back to Ion Bank, they are neutral. So when we went to the GMC, masa tu they call it, the Group Management Committee, and we presented the products, if they said no, it's because they didn't understand it.
Correct.
And if they say no, it's because they don't see the commercial value of it.
Yes.
And then when we go back to the drawing board, contohnya kita nak buat masa tu produk Arahnu. Today Arahnu is so ubiquitous.
Yes.
In 2007, people thought it was a swear word. Why apa benda haram? No, it's pawnbroking. Oh no, maknanya we are
Macam kedai.
we are encouraging people to pawn away their stuff apa semua. So there was no comprehension of what the product is. There is a miscomprehension
Yes.
or a misunderstanding of what the product does. There is a misalignment into what we want to do or what we want to gain out of that
The
product.
purpose.
And there is a intrinsic purpose and extrinsic purpose.
Yes.
Extrinsic purpose is productnya terms and condition lah. The intrinsic purpose is we wanted to test out a fresh fresh Islamic finance product to the market and see how it goes.
Yeah.
And because 2007, everything was there if you think about it. The regulatory framework was there.
Dah ada.
Sama ada Internal Syariah Advisory Committee, Badri, who is a friend of mine, my colleague dulu dekat UIA and then later on dekat Islamic. He was the Syariah so-called advisor dalam Yoncap Islamic. And then we had a Syariah board. Masa tu, can you imagine? Masa tu, Daud Bakar was not even a Datuk, let alone a Tan Sri. He was just Dr. Daud.
Yeah.
And he was trying to help us maneuver
Yes.
our landscape macam mana. And then of course so all this framework is there, and then we have a neutral group side, and then we have our credit team from the conventional that do not understand what this is. So we made it and we launched it, and it was the fact that we launched it was already a miracle, but it also gave us a lot of lessons in terms of what we need to do.
Yes.
Okay, at that point in time, the CEO of that time, dia dah split dah. Okay, kita buat Islamic Treasury, and then kita buat Islamic Corporate Banking. Masa tu, Ruslina Ramli contohnya. Now dekat MDEC. These are all pioneers. And it was so remarkable for me to be at the right place at the right moment.
Correct.
But I wasn't long there. Sebab after a while, it was absorbed by Hong Leong Islamic.
Yes.
Tak lama dekat Hong Leong Islamic, and then that friend of a friend at SMB Islamic said, okay, there's
It's time for you to go.
Time for you to go. Time for me to join SMB. And for a while, the HR over at CMB had a tough time because I was still under a year. Of work experience. Tapi because it was a brand new arm, I managed to do so many things in that 9 or 10 months at Yoncap and Hong Leong. So the argument was so compelling for HR to take me, CMB HR to take me as a experienced hire and escape that route of management trainee ataupun junior trainee. So immediately terus masuk as a senior executive. That was yelah, in a way I feel thankful until today because that was my big break.
Okay.
And then of course immediately they put me as corporate services. Masa tu I double up, ada corporate services punya role. Maknanya I tak buat produk, I do corporate services. Basically jaga
corporate client.
Corporate clients. And then I was also the special officer to Datuk Badlisha. Again, masa tu encik aja.
Yeah.
These are all people yang humble beginnings. Okay, Badlisha, special officer dekat dia. And that also allowed me to experience the kind of exposure that I don't think not many people my age could get.
Alhamdulillah.
GMC level at CIMB Islamic punya group, GMC level at Islamic Division group wide for CIMB, and then GMC level of the entire banking group, which is not just Islamic, of course, with so many others. And then, of course, then that allowed me to look at non-banking products, banka, insurance, ataupun other non-banking fee-based income businesses. And that was so remarkable sebab dulu dekat Yoncap dengan Hong Leong tak ada these kind of products. More retail.
Yeah.
And that's fine, that's great because when you start off at retail, you get the impact straight up of what a banking does. But then when I joined CIMB Islamic, that basically taught me, retail banking is just
kecil.
The world is so big. And then of course diversified markets because CIMB was at that point in time was a global bank, not just a regional bank. So macam Encik Mata sebut tadi, Bahrain, London, Niaga,
and your Lipo Bank,
Lipo Bank. Okay. So immediately corporate finance was straight up my alley. So I did a lot of mergers and acquisition, valuation, computational strategies, apa lagi? Culture harmonization that is unquantifiable, I thought, but apparently it can.
Yes.
When you merge two entities, it can be quantifiable in terms of cultural integration, and the most painful one, which is redundancy management. When you have 3,000 staff here, 5,000 staff there, you gabung, it doesn't become 8,000.
Yes.
You have to let go.
Correct.
Especially when it comes to operational efficiency.
Yeah.
So then that humanity aspect comes in versus cruelty and operational efficiency.
Correct.
So how do you balance? Because kalau kita robot, okay, 3,000 people out of the job.
First in, first out.
First in, first out. Ataupun the acquirer, and then the acquirer tu kita just VSS, lantak kau lah buat apa. But apparently that's not how you do business, especially for banking. You have to rationalize, you have to find ways to harmonize. And then later on, when we harmonize the folks at Niaga and Depot, and then how it harmonizes with our Islamic banking, and then how we had to establish our businesses, and how we created our JV dengan our Bahrain partner at that point in time, Badai Kanu, and the Kanu Group, and then we dissolved that JV. It was so intense and so fast. At one point, we had to do our annual management dialogue, AMD, and I had to do it because I was the special officer to the CEO. And we had these bubbles. We were inspired by a McKinsey or BCG punya deck. The bubble shows the size of asset growth, and if you draw it on a 2-degree axis, X and Y, the higher you are, the more intense your growth asset is. Yes. We were so big, the bubble, and we were so high, indicating that our asset growth is big and the rate of asset growth is the fastest in the world, which makes sense because we were issuing debt papers like nobody's business, and that grew our asset tremendously, and our book running skill was very high. Our collaboration with other book runners with other banks was extremely competitive and extremely aggressive. And we were entering markets where markets were still not ready for us, especially
emerging market.
Yeah, emerging market. And you would be, of course, you would not be surprised, but the market would be surprised. GCC was considered as emerging market for Islamic finance. GCC.
Yeah.
Kita ni kononnya dah mature market.
Sepatutnya lah.
So kita pun, I go kepala like, what the hell? Why is Saudi, why is...
so left behind.
Behind us. They are still ahead for global markets, but they are behind us when it comes to Islamic finance. So that makes sense. And then, of course, the accolades came in. World's fastest bank, world's fastest Islamic bank, growing, world's largest asset, world's best penama suku lah, apa benda macam-macam lah semua masuk. Daripada IFN lah, Red Money lah, apa semua, all these publications and all these awards. And then, of course, Bank Negara was extremely supportive. And then there was a different challenge. This was already 2014 masa tu, 2013. Talents started leaving. Muzaffar left to join Maybank. Safri left masa tu to join IILM, tak silap ataupun
No, Safri went to overseas.
Yes.
I was with him in Dubai.
Yes. Okay. And then basically people left lah.
Yeah.
And then somebody like Shamsun, dia terus retire terus. Yes. Walaupun dia ni asalnya bank Islam, dia start everything, dia
disappear.
Exactly. Lepas tu and then of course anak-anak buah Ustaz Ghani immediately became bosses in their own right.
Everywhere.
My compatriots continued on. Aizam for instance, dia pergi mula-mula dia pergi Maybank, lepas tu dia pergi M-Bank apa semua. And then I left. Because I felt that I gained so much, but at one point dia macam, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life?
Saturated or no?
No, it's not about saturated.
But
I felt that I am done with this. I am okay. Masa tu I dah keluar Islamic, I dah move to another branch lah. I did conventional, I did group strategy, corporate finance, reporting to chief strategy officer. And then I went to CEO's office for mergers and acquisitions, and I reported at first to Tan Sri Nazir, and then later on to Tengku Zafrul, and then many others lah. So I already left the Islamic punya world behind, and then I masuk retail banking juga. I buat masa tu 2013 I buat business intelligence unit and I learned coding, and I learned that was intense for me lah. I mean,
Yeah.
around me were all non-Muslim, semua robots,
Yeah.
um,
IT nuts.
IT nuts, and they were talking in languages that I they speak English tapi aku tak faham.
Yalah.
And so they sent me to training for data analytics, data modeling. And 2013, it was so foreign, you know. And the only people who did it were SAS Institute and SAP at that point in time. Now dah banyak lah. But in 2013, it was just SAS and SAP. So I learned Python, I learned C++, I learned C language, I learned gila. And then then buka lah account orang kan. Wow, I can look into people's account ni walaupun blinded lah. So it was we can't see the name. Tapi then I saw, oh wow, this is what banking is, retail banking. Correct. This is what banking is. And then we extract value, we make leads for some of our product owners. That was all fun, and I learned enough. And then I said, okay, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. Back out. So then 1MDB happened. Kebetulan pula, I was part of that team that was looking at that point in time, 2012, 2013. I wasn't terlalu berkenan benda ni. At that point in time, we didn't realize what it was kan. We just treated it as a vanilla products. Client pun government of Malaysia. You know, everything looks legit. But then we didn't get the job. Goldman Sachs did, and so on. And then 2014 happened, and then I said, you know what, I want to go for something that was very strange for me lah. Just go out in the wilderness. So I tendered. Bila tendered, no job was in hand. Serve notice 3 bulan.
BFM come in.
BFM came at the 3rd month or 2nd month. Was at a friend's house. Dia ada majlis sikit. Kemudian the CEO of BFM was there. 1 or 2 other people were there from BFM. Dia kata, you want to get paid for talking because you seem to talk a lot. So I pun, yeah, sure. And then because I listen to BFM every day. At that point in time, everybody does. Mana ada podcast zaman dulu.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, lepas tu I punya lah ingat diorang nak masuk I sleep mana-mana kan. No, Morning Run. And betul kata, when can you start? I cakap, well, I'm serving my notice now. I can start next week. Straight away. Lepas tu adalah screen test. The screen test was fine. Geng-geng barulah jumpalah. Melissa Idris, Kusu Chuang, Syarat Puten, Julian Eng, David Chu, Umar Pagan, Ezra, Zaid, and the gang lah.
On camping experience there.
Dia guest. Dia ni ada is a regular guest lah. So I felt liberated. Sebab there was a microphone, you can speak, and it was dicey because masa tu, imagine 2015, it was not as free as today, the media. So 2016 juga, 2015, 2016, but it was at the height of 1MDB. You can't not talk about 1MDB. Yeah. Everything was about 1MDB. DOJ US was talking about 1MDB. Everything, right? Wall Street Journal, you name it. So it was very good and very intense. So that was the start of my broadcast punya live lah.
Yeah.
That was I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Yeah, I noticed that when you move on after BFM, you with Astro Awani in your Ibrahim Sani notepad. Your question were very structured. It was very now that I realize those experience that you pick up along the way.
Yeah.
As well as your interest in this finance.
Yeah.
That what makes that session was very straightforward. Tapi tengok tak senyum pun.
Tak senyum.
Ya Allah, muka macam
kerah kan? Yalah, sedekah kan maksudnya. But there was one skill set that I did not learn throughout my time in banking that until today I macam
galat sikit.
Galat sikit. Kredit.
Oh, okay.
Kredit I tak pernah buat. I present to the credit committee, but you know, to sit on the other side. There's a paper, tak silap, CCP. CCP level 1 I buat, tapi there's a few others, ada a few levels kan. CCP level 1 tu kita semua kena buat sebab kita nak buat paper for the credit committee. But that was just basically showing how we are to prepare a credit paper, not to evaluate the credit quality of the client. But my notepad dekat Astro Awani tu, it was more of me trying to be that.
Interrogative.
Be on the other side. So I had felt how to be asked by the credit committee. So I try to do that in my show masa dekat Awani dulu to see how we can be more interrogative to the people. Now, there is an element here. When I was in banking, kita ni tengok CEO ni, jawatan CEO ni macam tinggi. Macam Tuhan. Wow, you kena respect. Gini.
The ultimate
lah. And then of course, as a worker, we aspire to be that one day. Walaupun kita tahu dia piramid kan. Bawah ni ada 10 orang. Bila jadi manager 3 orang. Bila jadi ni, lepas tu eventually there's only one CEO. But all of us had the same aspirations. All of us want to be the CEO because it's a good thing to have an aspiration. It actually drives you forward. And for the young workers that I meet, young talents that I come across, sama ada my work in Yayasan Praju atau apa, I told them that encourage yourself to aspire to be something that is there. Sama ada CEO ataupun if you want to run your own business ataupun if you want to have to be an impact agent on your community ataupun masyarakat, you have to have that. And some of them are young and they don't know where they want to be 10 years from now. But I cakap that's fantastic. But if you have that aspiration, at least you drive towards it. Kalau you tak suka, you can change your aspiration, be something else. Because at the very least, you kalau tak ada matlamat, susah nak hidup. Maknanya you bangun pagi, you kerja, you balik. Bangun pagi, you kerja, you balik. Sampai habis. And then before you know it, it's 50, 60 years old. I just celebrated my sister's 50th birthday. And I told her, my first memories of that, of her, was her 12th birthday. Itu as a baby, I ingat. Because to me, I don't know lah, macam 12 ni macam
masa tu seronok lah celebrate kan.
Taklah, maksud saya 12 and 18 ni macam milestone. So I remember celebrating her birthday. And now we are celebrating her 50th birthday.
Allah.
And it was, alhamdulillah, everything was good. Everybody was happy. We were enjoying ourselves and we were laughing. Anak-anak dia ada, my children ada, semua happy. And what I'm trying to say is 50 years old will get to you before you know it. Pejam celik settle, 50. Another question is, were you happy with how you carried yourself? My sister is extremely happy. Dia impact. Dia doktor, kerja community. Dia tak kisah pasal duit. Dia tak kisah pasal reta. Dia nak tolong orang. Kalau dia tak tolong orang, you will kill her that way. She will slowly die. Kalau dia tak mampu nak tolong orang. Sebab daripada kecil, dia memang tolong orang. And she was more of a mother to me than our own mother. So she raised us, my other sister and me. She was always a leader. She started life early. She got married early. Children semua dah besar. And I don't remember a point in time where she did not help people.
Masya Allah.
That was her mission and that was her aspiration. Dia tak pernah berangan nak jadi CEO ke, nak start business ke, tak. So, during her birthday tu,
media ke, tak ada.
I cakap, you are so damn lucky. You know why or not? You know what you want so early. And this entire 50 years of your life ni, you have dedicated your life to your community. You
enjoy every moment.
And life was hard for her because money is not easy for her because doctor, then she still kerja kerajaan, right? So anak dia besar, nak masuk universiti macam-macam lah semua lah. But dia tak kisah, dia tolong orang. And somehow or other, and this is contrary to popular belief, I'm not that religious, I'm not. But I do believe that rezeki is dalam tangan Tuhan lah. And if you stay true to what you do, rezeki tu ada je.
Tak salah alamat.
Tak salah alamat. I was telling you about how life was very difficult for me early on after university. I kerja sebab nak bagi bini dengan nak makan. I tak makan 2 hari pun tak apa. Itu no problem.
Allah.
No, but it was that time point in time, kerja nak cari duit untuk anak. And it was literally kais pagi makan pagi. Kalau ada delivery 10 rumah yang order, dapatlah RM100. RM100 pula kat kerat dengan si Haji Syarilau. And then kalau that day 3 rumah je, 3 rumah lah, RM30. Kadang-kadang Haji Syarif dia kata, kau simpan je lah the whole thing. Because he doesn't need the thing. He just wants to have equitable partnership.
Correct.
If we make 1 million, okay, give me my share. But if you RM30, you sambil lepas tu I cakap terima kasih banyak. Tapi you know, I will always try to make back that money for him lah. So if you work in the service of others, if you are in the act of others, rezeki tu banyak. The trick is to work for others. Kalau you start working for yourself, somehow or other rezeki, this is my experience. Rezeki tu macam susah. Macam tak cukup. Sempit You will get it, especially kalau kerja you halal, but it's not that easy. But if you work for others, mashallah, it's so easy. You tend to get the money if you need it for other people. So my sister is that case. Because she works in the service of others, anak-anak dia forever cukup.
Jalan je.
For me sama juga, you know. I'm now divorced with my wife. Anak-anak dah besar, 18 years old, ada yang 14, ada yang 12. And rezeki ada. For them ada. And I always keep that in mind. So, because masa kita divorce tu, my ex-wife tu, dia pun worried juga. Dia kata, how now? Because kita dah split household. I cakap, don't worry. God will provide. Dia cakap, ni serius ni. I cakap, ni serius ni. Because single household, I mean, everybody knows. Single household, you know, you concentrate the wealth creation. Double household, you don't double the wealth. You actually split the wealth creation process. Yes. But alhamdulillah, both my ex and I cukup alhamdulillah in terms of how we want to have enough for the family.
Okay, before we end the first part of our very Asas podcast today, I mean, you learned the journey on the road. You started, I would say, you started Grab or Panda way before things happen. So you understand that. You are in the bank, you are in local, you are in international. And you also went up from zero to almost the maximum of your lifespan dekat banking, Islamic banking, and also, I mean, retail banking, corporate banking, you have covered quite a lot. But you face a lot of challenges. Do you think with the growth of finance, Islamic finance or economy now, the current workforce facing the same challenge? Catching up, understanding and wanted to be different between Islamic finance and conventional, taklah copycat, tukar interest kepada profit dan sebagainya. The understanding from the technical part and the gap between the syariah tu masih wujud dan is a big challenge or not?
Masih wujud. Masih big challenge. Sebab siapa? Kenapa? Yang faham dah tak ada.
Okay.
Nazir Razak, he did not have an appreciation on Islamic finance awalnya, but Lisha changed that perception. Then he became a strong supporter of it. The ex-CFO, Kenny Kim, also same thing. But now he understands. All these luminaries, they all had a tough time, and now they understand. Okay. But none of them are in the
industry
anymore. Retired, passed away. Whatever lah, left. Then there's a new crop. And then the new crop of Islamic finance pun macam tu juga. So that constant comprehension will always be there because generation continuously shift.
Yeah.
And then of course banking, people say that the finance has taken a new shape. Well, yes, but at the same time finance is always there. Has always been. Dulu dinari, sistari, the gold coins.
Yeah.
Then the dinari became dirham, from Roman to and then from dirham, because of inflation, the gold content and silver content in the coins reduced.
Yes.
So from something like where the silver dinari had 100% silver content in the 1st and 2nd century, by the time 5th century, it had 0.5%, 1% content silver, because they keep on printing money, and then inflation hit, and then collapsed. After the barbarians ransacked Rome, it collapsed. But then with the collapse of Rome, the Islamic civilization grew. And then of course, same thing again and again, right? And then of course, all the way to Maghribi, and all the way to Glasini, and then Islamic civilization thrived, not just the economic and finance part, but the literature, the culture, the poets, everything. But then split balik, collapse balik. The same thing about civilization's rise and fall can be said about Islamic finance, because when I started off, retail banking was new to accept Islamic finance, and then now it's not. And then investment banking was new to Islamic finance, and then it's not. Corporate banking was new later on, 2014, is new. Now, most corporates are neutral or at least favoring Islamic finance products. And then EPF started to introduce Sharia offering, and then people started attacking it. Kenapa the jaw is widening in terms of year-on-year returns. But if you notice, last year was
The same.
no, this year
This
is
year the same.
This year same. 2023 there was dulu bips about 50 bips, 60 bips, and then it became 20 bips, and then it became 15, and then it became 5, and now 0.
Yeah.
There is no discrepancy. And then people start to understand, oh, okay, because the Islamic assets are now growing.
Yeah.
That's why the returns on these Islamic assets is now getting the same kind of returns from to conventional. 6.3 is phenomenal, by the way.
Yeah.
I was watching my old friend's podcast, Kusu Chuang. Baru ni, he was interviewing a guy talking, very very familiar with personal finance, rainmaker lah senang kata. If you hire him, his professional fee is high, but at the same time your returns are going to be high as well. So you know, it's a very class act lah, this guy. 6.3 is Singaporean, by the way, this guy, Kusu Chuang interview ni. Dia kata CPF will not get this high, you know, at most 3%, 4%. EPF this year 6.something% it's amazing, and this is on the back of QAP getting 10% returns from their investment. They have 180 billion AUM. They posted an 18 billion revenue. You know, so and then of course now kita seronok lah.
Yeah.
But when it goes down, don't be alarmed, because if you take year-on-year snippet, memanglah you heart attack.
Yeah.
Itu belum month on month or minute by minute.
Yeah.
Investment is a long-term game.
Yes.
But to grow Islamic asset, how long did they take?
Yes.
I think 8 years now. Berapa entah 10 years? Actually, I don't know.
We started Islamic finance in 83, but the
No,
real
I talk
growth,
about the EPF, Islamic finance.
it
Islamic.
was maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Kan, lebih kurang lah kan. Slightly before pandemic dah.
Yeah.
So it took 7-8 years maybe to grow the Islamic asset kat Syariah of EPF. QAP, same thing. All the other places, same thing. But every time you introduce, you will see new individuals, and that new on both ends, conventional and Islamic. And tu belum masuk regulators.
Betul.
So while you have the systems in place, or the Akta dah ada, the regulations dah ada, the board structure dah ada, the Sharia board, ecosystem dah ready. People change.
Yeah.
And every time change, there's a new understanding requirement. People need to understand differently. And then, of course, technological advances come about. So yes, there will always be a gap. Bermaksud apa? There will always be a job for Islamic finance practitioners. Sama ada at the product side, corporate services side, ataupun the Syariah side.
Yeah.
Sama ada Syariah team ataupun Syariah board.
Yeah.
Because this is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
This is not going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
It will be there. Now the question is, do you want to dedicate your life in it ke tidak? Because if you are main-main ataupun you just want to have a job,
Tak payah.
tak payah. Do something else. There's a lot of other things. But if you think that this is your life's mission, if you think that this is supposed to be your calling,
Yeah.
okay, stay, because I don't think that this is for the light-hearted. If you don't toss yourself 100% into it, you don't put your life into it, dia tak menjadi.
And also in the light of the next movement of Islamic finance, now we have ESG, you know, whether 5 and 17, Maqasid and ESG, which one is bigger?
Yeah.
You also have digital banking, cut across all the brick and mortar building. We also have now digital asset that we have to cater. Entah macam-macam, nama pelik-pelik kan. The recent one kena 1.6 billion. Okay. The fourth one is basically people are talking about, previously we may just need to educate the Islamic finance consumer. You rightly pointed out that now when EPF went out, when other non-banking structure or consumer go into Sharia, the market was even wider. We also now move into another area that we are collaborating, the social finance. into the finance spectrum. So we will stop here for our session 1. We will move into session 2 and we will talk more about the talent. Yeah, the talent gap, the effort made, the scarcity of supply, and what Asas and how Asas are working together with the support of Yayasan Peneraju in our journey. Alright, we'll come back in the session 2 insyaAllah. Thank you very much. Stay tuned. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Okay, sekejap. Toilet.
Okay. Toilet. Tengok. Sekejap. Buka tak? Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Welcome back to session 2 of Very Podcast Asas with Mr. Ibrahim Sani, the CEO of Yayasan Peneraju. Yeah, I just want to share with you, Ibrahim, some statistic of how Yayasan Peneraju has been supporting Asas since 2020. The first intake came in 2023. No, the first intake was from we had our first intake back in 2021, in fact. Okay, so up to now, you have helped us, or Yayasan Peneraju have sponsor or co-sponsor about 181 learners in our CSA CSP program, and they came, or they are from about 101 institutions. So by statistic as well, we have covered about 20 lecturers. So these are the new potential for Syariah Committee members. We have 6 lawyers, 142 officers from various institutions, 4 existing Syariah Committee, and 9 from Halal, from Wealth Management, from Takaful and everything. So what the program is about, it was launched in 2017. By the governor of Bank Negara then, Tan Sri Ibrahim, Muhammad Ibrahim. The program was basically to crossbreed. The technical people will study more Syariah, the Syariah people will study more technical. So that the impact basically for orang Syariah to go to their community, talk about accounting, talk about law, talk about economy. And the same thing, orang accounting akan bercerita tentang muamalat, tentang usul fiqh dan usul fiqh, dan juga differences among mazhab, ya, usul mazahib. So dia taklah, dulu kita dengar contoh Islamic Finance, ayam sembelih ayam tak sembelih, kan? Now the sample are more relevant to the community. Number 3, we are also now happy because the lecturer yang join our program bring back the latest knowledge of industry to the classroom, so that 39 university yang ajar Islamic Finance ni can produce more employable group. But the limitation is still there. Islamic Finance and finance are challenge. Okay, so bila kita nampak macam tu, the fourth one, kenapa program tajaan Yayasan Peneraju ni sangat bagus kepada asas adalah this is the only program in the world at the moment yang buat crossbreed ni, dekat negara lain tak ada. Kita crossbreed, dan juga bila kita push for yayasan dulu, sebelum ada Yayasan Peneraju, sponsors only come from the industry. So biasalah masuk dalam industri nak kena queue, the senior come first, the syariah people come first. But when come to through Yayasan Peneraju, dia boleh cut the queue. We can get even junior and some 1 to 3 years, which are Yayasan Peneraju punya target market to grow, to come in and join our program. So that we have done with that. We have 700 learners, 156 including 19, the one that you give the conformant itu kan, dah grad. We move to the second program now. What we do is to create new talent altogether. Kita launch Syariah Committee Succession Plan. You were there. Because kita nak muka-muka baru, kita nak new generation to lead the industry. You mentioned clearly that some of them left. Arwah Ustaz Ghani, Ustaz our mentor Cik Wan Rahim dah tak ada, the CEO of Bank Islam.
Lama-lama ni.
Lama-lama kan. Datuk Halim dah tak ada. I can name all that. Some of them left already, but yang pengganti tu tak ada. So
And they should leave.
Yeah.
You know, they should leave because the time is for the new one juga.
Exactly.
And also you nak kerja sampai bila.
Betul.
But yes, the new ones are leaving. But you see, these numbers are fantastic. And I wish I had this program when I was in the scene dulu.
Exactly.
Sebab the informal training that I got for Syariah was on the job. Itu pun, you know, you naik kereta dengan arwah Ustaz Ghani, and then kalau ada cerita lah. Kalau ada cerita bola ke apa ke, something lah kan.
Yeah.
It's not structured.
Correct. But what we are doing now a very structured program. We have 17 module for Syariah people, 20 module for non-Syariah people. Tu yang crossbreed tu. And we have 5-tier program for Syariah Committee Succession Plan. We are pushing for the senior Syariah Committee to become board. So this is the leadership succession plan yang asas involved dalam leadership. Kita masukkan new breed untuk masuk dalam community Syariah Committee pool. We can share with you the talent pool nanti masuk, because you already technically you have 181 talent pool dalam your list dah yang orang Syariah ni. Then kita rasa bila kita nak push the Syariah Committee to the board, dia rasa macam jauh sangat. Syariah Committee meeting dengan board meeting, the quality of the meeting dan sebagainya. So we are now when we work for the board program, kita work dengan ICDM, Institute Corporate Directors Malaysia, dan juga dengan FIDE Forum. So kita boleh train that part. Tapi bila dia rasa ada gap tu, that's why we work with MISA. We want to convert the Syariah Secretariat to become Chartered Secretary. So to us, I mean, you give an example of Alice yang dekat Sabah kan? In On Kambing punya session. To us, when we produce these people yang colourful knowledge, tambah dengan Syariah, they can even go down to the community. Masuk Majlis Ugama Islam Negeri, masuk halal, masuk direct connection with the community, so that they can become the inspirer, the leaders. So this is how I think we can map up together with Yayasan Peneraju initiative lah. So what is your direction for Yayasan Peneraju? I know you have a plan, but anything that we can put together for Islamic Syariah fraternity?
Okay, let's talk about the function of Yayasan Peneraju dulu.
Yeah.
So Yayasan Peneraju is an agency under Kementerian Ekonomi.
Yeah.
And our target market are Bumiputra talents.
Yes.
Now we work alongside Teraju, which is the ecosystem developer and also entrepreneur incubator for the Bumiputra entrepreneurs.
Correct.
And Teraju has this dual function where they regulate the policies when it comes to Bumiputra. That's why they were central towards the Congress Ekonomi Bumiputra 2035, as well as Putra 35, Putra Pelan Transformasi Ekonomi Bumiputera 2035. They were central to it. And they were the secretariat to that Congress Ekonomi Bumiputera and Putra 35. And they are also the secretariat for the Majlis Ekonomi Bumiputera, to which the PM chairs and deputized by Menteri Ekonomi Rafizi Ramli, as well as Timbalan Perdana Menteri Zahid Hamidi is also the Menteri Pembangunan Luar Bandar. And the agencies that work inside the two different ministries yang critical here is over at Kementerian Pembangunan Luar Bandar is MARA. And MARA has their own act. MARA is this humongous beast when it comes to operationalizing their activities, and MARA is well known for the market. For us, because we are EPU ataupun Kementerian Ekonomi, we have to be targeted and very decisive in how we do things. I would liken MARA to be the army. And for us, we are commandos, and we are truly get in, get out, get the job done. Even though wars must be fight somewhere. And that's why when we did the CSA CSP program with Asas 2 years ago.
2021,
4 years dah. Oh my God. Okay. 4 years ago, it was with that intention to upskill a certain amount, create a catalyst, and then leave. That's why 2025, when we say we leave CSP CSA, we are leaving the existing structure. And we want to do something that is going to be different. Okay. Let's talk about the numbers that we talk. It is very important and very critical. So now we have 700 learners, we have 181 conferred, and many more. Okay, done. Now we look at what the necessity for the country needs, and how does Bumiputera Talents help that national requirement, and how does Yayasan Pengeraju help the Bumiputera Talents requirements. So it's a balik punya pyramid. You have country needs, and the country needs to do a few things. Number one, get out of middle income trap. Number two, make ourselves the powerhouse of the world for certain industries. Cannot be everything. The moment kita hub for EV, hub for ini, hub for Islamic finance, hub for ini, hub, that means we're not a hub for anything. The moment you say you focus on many things, you're not focusing on anything. The very definition of focus is to discard all the other distractions and go for one. Itu konsep focus. Kalau you kata, I sebenarnya I focus yang ini. You are generalizing everything. You're not focusing at all. When this is not many people talk about this. Focus means to make the hard decision to not do other things. And that's painful. That's why focusing is painful. Focus, dia jarum, pin, dia point. You take a buku, you tekan on your knee, you tak buku tu tak akan tembus kaki you. Tapi ataupun this pillow. No matter how big. But if you take one single jarum, you cocok, it will go through. And the difference here is you did not hit the entire thing, but you did penetrate. So what is it that Yayasan Pengeraju wants to penetrate right now? Yayasan Pengeraju needs to create 100,000 professionals. Professionals in the sense of professional accountants, professional chartered financial analysts, professional technologists, sama ada data analysts, cyber security experts and the like. Professional everything. And the reason we do this is because, consistent with the name of this podcast, go back to basics. Iaitu, you ada skill set accounting ke tidak? You ada skill set finance ke tidak kalau CFA? You ada skill set program management ke tidak? You ada skill set nak tulis code ke tidak? You ada skill set nak manage cyber security ke tidak? By the way, every single thing here is open to attack. Everything ni machine your software ni pun is open to attack.
Correct.
As long as you have a data outlet, that's it. Maknanya good guy come in, bad guy come in. Your good guy is your technician, working behind the camera. The bad guy also come in, and then they can corrupt. And especially if you make this online, lagi the threat is even worse. The same philosophy is being applied for universities. And this is the part where it gets controversial. I completely disagree kalau you offer Bachelor of Islamic Finance. Now, there are a lot of proponents for that.
Correct.
I disagree. I want more people to do Bachelor of Finance and then do Islamic Finance at the workplace.
Fine. I'm okay with that.
Sebab, where does it end? Because if you start offering Bachelor of Islamic Finance, then why not Islamic Economics, Bachelor of Islamic Accounting, Bachelor of Islamic Mathematics, Bachelor of Islamic Architecture, Bachelor of Islamic Engineering.
Semua ada I.
Ada.
I.
Ini gila already. You do Islamic Finance, but then you might not necessarily have the same skill set as your compatriot yang dah belajar 3 tahun, 4 tahun sama dengan you.
Exactly.
And you will be disadvantageous. And this is backed by numbers.
Yes.
There's a university in Malaysia that offers Bachelor of Finance and Bachelor of Islamic Finance. They have a lesser hiring rate for Bachelor of Islamic Finance.
Agree.
They will never publish this number.
Correct.
Because it is embarrassing for them and because it is showing that there is harm in teaching Islamic finance as a degree because it doesn't get people employed.
Correct.
Which is counterintuitive to what you and I and many others in the in the industry wants to do. Kita nak ramaikan orang lagi masuk Islamic finance. In fact, kalau boleh, convert the entire finance world to become Sharia compliant.
Yes.
Which is, by the way, you know this better than I do, is already in the process by our players,
Regulator.
by our, before we went into the break just now, all the other new products ataupun categories. Digital assets, Bitcoin,
social finance, ESG,
ESG. These are all, if you ask frankly, it's all compliant already. We just need to retrofit it to our governance structure and our ecosystem.
Yes.
So, what is so non-compliant about ESG?
Yeah.
ESG is Sharia compliant. In fact, it's lesser in terms of compliance if you think about Islamic finance. Finance is more encompassing than ESG. So, when you do these things yang macam it sounds like a good idea but it isn't, it is actually counterproductive to your efforts on growing Islamic finance. Now, let's take a look at itu in terms of Bachelor of Islamic Finance versus Islamic Finance. Okay, done. When you look at CSA and CSP, it has to go on. It must go on, but must Yayasan Peneraju be there? I make the case that we don't have to be there in its current state. We can be there in the future state if we translate this to pinjaman.
Okay.
Zero interest.
Okay.
Then, okay. Because we needed to give sponsorship for the initial stage to create that number first.
Okay.
Once kita dah ada 700 learners, 180 plus convert and so on, now we have in a way, a critical mass. Even though it's too small, even if you ask for me, it's too small.
Yeah.
But at least we have something. Dulu kosong. Now ada 100 plus or 200. Okay. Now, can our future learners take a bit of skin in the game and apply for a loan from Yayasan Peneraju at zero interest to make it Sharia compliant?
Okay.
You take RM1, you pay RM1 back.
Okay, fine.
Then it is, number one, more beneficial for the scholar because now we are increasing our money. We can give more scholars to take more money. And number two, it adds that social responsibility. Dulu scholarship. So, you know, if you...
Part funding lah.
Part funding. So, if you want to do it, well, you don't have to do it. Macam itulah. There's a acuh tak acuh punya situation. But now you have skin in the game. There is an inherent motivation for you to complete that program. And the most important thing is, number three, it is sustainable financing. So, but how much longer can Yayasan Peneraju have money to give for scholarship?
Faham.
Eventually, the money will run out.
Yeah.
And that sustainable financing is when we give you the money and you pay back, that money now can be used for other people.
Correct.
And that is the part where we are going ahead.
Okay.
When they hired me for this job, Kementerian Ekonomi, they know that I had zero learning and training development competency. They know that I'm a broadcaster. Aku kerja aku cakap. But I didn't know. It wasn't until a few months into the job that, they want me to restructure the financing element of Yayasan Peneraju.
Yeah. That's why they need an accountant.
And then to make things worse, my chairman is an auditor. Bagus aku.
Betul lah.
You know, so
One
it's a lot
plus
easier.
one.
So bila I jumpa my internal auditor tak benda. Sebab my chairman is the more dramatic auditor than my external auditor. My internal auditor sebab my chairman screens through everything. Mampus aku nak ngelak apa pun dah. Kita nak con dia lagi tak boleh.
Yalah.
Lepas tu, but the relationship that I have with my board is so robust that I push the limit. I push the limit. Benda gila aku nak buat. The board will meet me halfway. Kalau benda tu sensible, then they allow.
Okay.
But if the thing is too outlandish, they will put a stop to it and rein me in.
Yeah.
But that again, I urge people to embrace the concept of friction.
Yeah.
Bukan nak cari gaduh. Nak cari gaduh, no problem. Kita main bola aja petang ni, gaduh lah kita. That's not the point. The point here is friction. I have an idea and I want to push it, and I'm very strong. Personality-wise, I'm very, very strong. I am aggressive and I am assertive and I want this. So, kalau the counterparty tu tak meet me head on, then I not good for my organisation, then I bawa lah ke langit.
Yalah.
Then susah. But if the opponent is also strong in their views, then the only thing that wins, the one idea that leaves the room, is the best idea that leaves the room. And we both don't have to hurt each other, harm each other, insult each other. None of that. It's just that you can have that humility to accept the fact that, I'm sorry, Mata, your idea was lousy. This is why it's lousy. My idea is not the greatest, but it's less lousy than yours. Then we walk out. Okay. Besok, terbalik. Terbalik. My idea is the lousy one and your idea is the most phenomenal one. We walk out.
Yeah.
It is really, really important for us to embrace differentials of opinions and ideas when we bring our value to the workplace.
Yeah.
Baru we see a change.
Okay.
So last week we did I don't know when this comes out, but on the 26th of February, we announced the biggest shift Yayasan Praja has ever done. I ni hesitate bila cakap Yayasan Praja 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. I pun tak tahu which one is which.
I don't know.
So let's call it Yayasan Praja 2.0 lah.
Yeah.
Sebab dulu kita bagi duit kepada learning and training institutions, like ASAS for instance. Then the learning and training institution or LTIs will then use those money to train our scholars.
Yeah.
And that was okay for the first 13 years. And now, while we have 180 plus numbers for CSP and CSA, we have 75,000 total of scholars across all the programs that we did. TVET, medical specialists.
560 program.
560 program tu itu yang gila sebenarnya. I mean, I'm telling you it's gila. This is like putting the book nak tembus kaki tak lepas. Right? Because it's too much. We terminated. This is a decision made by the chairman and the Menteri of Economy Rafizi Ramli. He made the announcement last week juga masa the announcement of our new financing scheme. He made that decision to focus. That means to terminate the programs yang kita buat yang lain-lain ni. And it wasn't a wrong decision then at all. It wasn't wrong. But if you want to focus, it means to terminate. So we terminated TUNAS, we terminated medical specialists, we terminated TVET. Now that, in essence, have brought the 560 programs down to 60 programs.
Yeah.
So 60 programs, tinggal dua, which is the two big one, technology and professionals.
Yeah.
CSA, CSP belongs in that professional.
Yeah.
Data analyst apa bagai semua in technology.
Yeah.
Now we can say we are focusing.
Yes.
And are we serving the needs of the country? We are.
Yes.
Now, if our professional people want to do Islamic finance, we highly encourage and urge them to do so. But are we delivering specialized programs specific to some industries? No longer.
Okay.
That's why many of the programs, especially in the professional space, we are toning down and we are keeping it to very basic, very asas.
Yeah, I think why we push for this juga because we have other talent development players under Bank Negara, under Securities Commission and everything, but addressing specific Syariah committee needs. Imagine we have 139 Syariah committee under Bank Negara. We have 84 Syariah committee under Securities Commission. We have another 30 under Labuan FSA, but some of them are duplicating. We make a study, we make a statistic. Out of these 170 odd names, only 4% below 40. 50% above 50, 55, 56, 57 that joined the industry together with your time. So kalau kita delay another year, that means we going to get more 60 and then we got less
Yalah, dia
players.
punya graph tu menanjak.
Nganjak. Satu, we still want to keep and become the Islamic finance hub, the champion. This is something that we always proud of. But we have 79 other countries are catching up. Some are starting, some are even advancing. Pakistan will have to convert all their banking into non-riba by 1st January 2028. Imagine, they are at 23% now. We are 46.5%. So how imagine Pakistan, Karachi itself is 32 million. We are 37 million. Imagine what Pakistan, what Indonesia that can make if we were lagging behind or slowing down. We still have a lot of Malaysian serving in other countries. So Asas is working with Syariah Professional Association in Gulf to bring some of the expertise of Malaysian to their side. Out of your Yayasan Peneraju sponsorship, I think 4 or 5 left for Gulf already. Abu Dhabi, Oman, and so on. So addressing the Syariah Committee, addressing the Syariah Secretariat, keeping Malaysia as the lead in Islamic finance, sending Malaysian to be one of the representative of Malaysia in other country as what we always do. You did in Manama and London and Indonesia. I think this is where we need to push CSA, CSP or professional program. Well, this program is basically not so much of a choice because we have 39 university producing Islamic finance graduate. They don't really go in depth into certain topic. So Bank Negara announced a program for us to do the crossbreed.
Yeah.
So I think if we were to ask the learners to fund themselves, it should be okay because out of 181 learners, only 30% are co-sponsored by the institution.
Yeah.
What I mean is that
Yeah.
they get 70 or 80
Yeah.
and the remaining come from the institution. The 70% will pay on their own. Yeah. So I think if we were to continue in this model, I think we are still in the game.
Yeah.
With Yayasan Peneraju.
And that's the part where I want to highlight also. We want to optimize how we deliver the programs for everyone, not just for, say, for instance, one sector.
Yes.
And if we do it this way, where we give the financing directly to the scholar under Yayasan 2.0, Yayasan Peneraju 2.0, then it is not just sustainable for that specific sector, but all the other sectors that we're looking at.
Correct.
And that's why dekat Yayasan Peneraju, the direct financing scheme that we offer to the scholars, there are 3 bentuk.
Yeah.
The first is what we call a silver package.
Yeah.
It is up to 15,000.
15,000 silver.
Silver. That silver tu, 15,000 tu pure play scholarship.
Yeah.
Tak payah bayar balik 10 sen pun. But you have to select from our peneraju.org punya selection. There's only these things. Initially, right now, 21 certifications. By late April, kita one day after SPM result, kita akan announce another further 200 pensijilan.
Okay.
That is silver. For gold, it is 30,000.
30,000, yes.
Pensijilan tu goes up to 30,000. You have to pay back 50%.
Okay.
It is in your interest to take a lower loan.
Yeah.
Lower financing. Yeah, it's in your interest. But if you take a financing of 20,000, you have to pay back 10,000. If you take 30,000, you have to pay back 15,000.
Yeah.
So how much is the CSP?
Just slightly above your goal.
Okay. Good. So take the goal, top up sikit, pay back 15,000.
Okay.
Alright. So that is the part where it is in the and then you bukan bayar balik selepuk.
Yeah.
But put yourself on a payment schedule. And as a ex-banker, I tengok 0% ni I lemas semangat sikit. Kita ni bank nak buat duit banyak kan. You letak 1% pun sedap.
Cukup,
you know, at least there's some cukup. 0%, patut, tapi tak apalah. This is a social element. So
Correct.
we have to do this. Right? For the platinum, it's 150,000 up to 150,000.
Yep.
And you pay back 20%.
20%. Okay.
So if you take 150,000, you kena bayar balik 30,000.
Okay. Okay.
And of course, you cannot game the system. Contohnya, if the program is 35,000,
Yeah.
so you take that 150,000.
Tak lah.
Lepas tu you bayar tak boleh
Tak,
lah.
tak orang kata tak syariah comply lah.
It's
kot.
not direct comply. And for me, I have my credit team at Yayasan Peraju to double check that
Correct.
persijilan.
Don't worry.
Kadang main-main pula kan. Just you letak 31,000 instead of 30,000, 31 so you ambil yang ni,
Tak.
lepas tu you bayar ni. I mean, you ingat you pandai. I pun pandai gitu. Tahu macam mana gaming ni kan.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is, if you are taking that package macam platinum, normally platinum is for post SPM, nak buat FIA, ACCA ataupun CFAP, ICAEW, then okay. Then no, memang because benda tu memang mahal.
Yeah.
And I don't think 150,000 completely pays the whole thing. I think you kena cari makan somewhere, parents ke ataupun you sendiri dulu. Masa universiti I double work, I kerja dekat Gombak tu, no problem.
Dia tak pakai pula pandau hitam ke hijau ke benda tu lalamu ke?
Tak lah, itu masa tu mana ada pandau benda. Kita benda lain kan. But the point is, we enable you so that you can get your own certification education that suits your requirement.
Correct.
Gone are the days where Yayasan Peraju dictates you should do this because we know better.
Yeah.
You know better.
Yeah.
You know what you want and we are just enabling you. So that's why masa April nanti, so sekarang ada 21 pensijilan. Nanti 200 ada, nanti late April ada 200 pensijilan. Julai tambah lagi another 200.
201 campur asal lah kot.
Okay, betul lah. And then towards the end of the year, we should have about 500 pensijilan.
Okay.
But this is not separate program.
Okay.
Because as far as we're concerned, macam 560 program, lepas tu kita drop 60, tak. This, as far as we are concerned, kita ada 3 je. Gold, silver, platinum.
That's it.
And we offer 3 packages, up to you to decide whichever program that we have green light your institution. LTI tu kena datang kat kita. Kalau LTI tu rasa dia punya persijilan tu sangat-sangat penting dan jive dengan apa kehendak kerajaan dan juga kehendak negara, kita akan green light, kita akan bagi you that logo, Approved Learning and Training Institution of Yayasan Peraju, LT. That LT logo we use, jadi scholar dia macam cari logo itu je. Bila dia orang nak tahu, oh this looks interesting, oh no logo of Yayasan Peraju, can't use it. Sama macam Jakim punya halal. You got 2 restaurants, both not serving pork, one has Jakim, one has not. You rasa you pergi mana? So same thing with us. You ada 2, so it's in the interest of the LTI to demand that logo from us so that we green light you guys. It is also in the interest of our scholars to look for the logo because we have done the due diligence of the LTI.
Okay.
So that you tak payah nak fikir that due diligence part already. You just tengok yang mana ada LT logo, jalan.
Okay.
That LT logo is renewable every year.
Okay.
And it is in the interest of my team to keep up to date in terms of what these LTs are doing year on year. So
we are okay with that.
And it's okay.
Okay.
And it seems like the LTIs are okay. The scholars are more than happy because duit there, and then we are okay. Cause there's credit risk. Kalau kita bagi duit, kawan tu lari, itu number 1 big problem lah. But number 2, how do we reduce that credit risk of our borrowers? We are now doing credit risk assessment of all our borrowers, and our database is linked up to Padu, and our database is linked up to all the other databases, so that we know the credit profile of our borrowers and our scholars. So we have now brought that risk of our borrowers to the same level as a typical unsecured lending customer of a bank.
Oh, okay.
So if they are good enough for a bank to give credit card or personal finance,
that's it.
They are good enough to get our loan.
Alright.
And our mechanism is, and unfortunately I have to say this, CRIS CTOS, passport lock, and this is worst case scenario. But we are approved of that. And the worst case is we tie it up to some of their securities, including EPF if needed. These are all tools that we are made available.
You have to do that.
But we don't want to. Sebab at the end of the day, kau ambil duit untuk apa? Untuk belajar. So, okay. We take it as we value. There ada scholars agreement dengan kita, to which point you agree to pay back, and to which point we will chase after you. Once you dah complete, we will give you a letter of demand, and we'll put you on a schedule. Kalau you disagree dengan timeline, maybe 3 years is too short to pay back everything, make it 5, make it 10, whatever lah. Tapi, because tak ada interest, go longer.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking as a banker, betul lah.
Stress to the limit.
Sebab you want to increase your disposable income.
Correct.
Tapi kalau you rimas, because for me, I tak suka debt. I ada something at the back of my mind.
Susah.
I rimas. I
Bayar
just
je lah.
kalau boleh, kalau ada duit, I dah habiskan.
Yeah.
Sebab wealth creation is not about it's not about having less debt or less liability. Wealth creation is how you manage your cash. So if it means to get rid of the debt very quickly so that I can have more cash later on, I would do it.
Yeah.
Tapi since it's zero interest, up to you lah to decide. You nak pergi 10 years pun boleh. Okay. But the point here is we chase after you after the letter of demand and pay back.
Okay.
Because it is in your interest to pay back because you are doing your social responsibility. You dah dapat duit tu. You dah dapat education.
Kenalah.
All I'm asking is, kesian orang belakang you. That number, that 4% is below 40 years old or 30 years old, and then 50% more than 50, is also the same number. I don't know whether you know. It is the same number as Securities Commission staff. Do you know this?
Okay.
I spoke to Datin Nur Azhar, tak silap nama dia. Dia ni SC punya GM, tak silap, on Notepad. She was sharing this number. I was so shocked. I'm like, what do you mean? Sebab dia pun ada recruitment drive dia.
Yeah.
Dia masuk Notepad sebab dia nak anak-anak muda ni masuk Securities Commission.
Yeah.
Dia punya pitch dia senang aja. You go to a bank has a typical normal distribution of ages in that thing. But you join Securities Commission, many of us are going to retire.
Wah, bagus dia
punya pitch dia dahsyat. Selling point dia dahsyat. So after the interview, I spoke to her, bumped into her in some other event. I met her at a corporate governance event at SC. I thought, how's the recruitment drive? Adalah uptick sikit, but it is still not the level that they want. Dia nak betul ramai-ramai anak-anak muda ni masuk Securities Commission. But for the love of me, I don't know why young Malaysians, especially young Bumiputra talents, are not embracing SC, Bank Negara ataupun banking, let alone Islamic banking as a career path.
Yeah.
I asked my daughter. She did one semester finance. That wasn't her. Dia tak suka.
No,
it's okay.
Not in the blood.
Not in the blood. But she still wants to do banking.
Okay. Masih ada lagi.
But sebab she likes the color of money.
Yeah.
So Yalah kita you nak benda yang you tak ada. Saya tak bagi dia duit. So dia puas dia jadi influencer dekat TikTok, jual makeup. Dia kerja dekat Dotis dekat KLCC.
Anak siapa?
Yalah, dia kerja dekat Decathlon. Aku bodoh.
Anak siapa?
Yang penting I cakap you ada kudrat. You kalau disable different story. Then we look at it differently. You ada kudrat, you ada akal. Kerja. I mean, and the more you kerja, the more I will supplement. You nak apa? Phone baru, you kerja. I will give you a phone.
One to one
grant matching.
Wah,
skin in the game kan.
Ini grant matching tu.
Decathlon. And by the way, I told her jangan kerja F&B, penat. Dia degil, dia nak juga. Sebab dia kata makan free. Betul pun. Now dia kerja Decathlon. So the work is less lah kan, in terms of compared to F&B kan. But work, you must work.
Yeah.
But she has moved from finance, from one private university to another private university. She's now doing law.
Ooh.
With no desire to become a lawyer, but she wants to have a law degree. Tu beza. So, I cakap, do you know the job specification yang paling lacking in most organizations, including Yayasan Peraju, are legal experts that knows the business.
Yeah.
You know legal, but do you know the business?
And also legal that can handle corporate meeting. Corporate board meetings.
Yes.
And
betul. And that's why the same conversation I'm having with Maisa, when it comes to getting professionals to be chartered secretaries, sama macam
Asas. We are doing that.
Because when you have a vanilla corporate secretary, that might not necessarily serve the benefit of the organization.
Correct.
We have to do more.
Yeah.
So if you have lawyers that are corporate chartered secretaries, if you have accountants that are chartered secretaries, if you have Sharia practitioners as chartered secretaries, you have all these other chartered secretaries, it makes more sense.
Correct. Let's go for it.
My handicap masa saya kerja dulu is dekat bank is because I don't know that much of Sharia, but I had enough because you are A grad. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
But normal Bachelor of Accounting people might not necessarily have that background.
Yeah.
So having CSE and CSP enables that bridging of competency.
Correct.
So the same can be said about all the other competencies as well, including chartered secretaries, lawyers, and the like.
Okay.
So I told her, you do law so that you can learn to be a banker through that. And we have a lot of names. Tun Daim was that. Former finance minister who is never an accountant, but a finance minister twice some more. You have apa nama dia, SC chairman Datuk Faiz Azmi.
Datuk Faiz.
Lawyer lah. He's a ICAW chartered ni, tapi he's very
colorful guy.
So go with that diversification. I mean, I was an accountant and became a broadcaster. You think about it that way lah kan?
Yeah, but coming back to the package, I know you have to leave soon. Silver, gold and platinum. I think our SCSPI, the Syariah Committee Succession Plan, can come under silver.
Okay.
Because why? The challenge for the new talent that nak masuk Syariah Committee sekarang, ialah dia buat fiqh usul fiqh, buat Islamic study daripada degree sampai ke PhD, dia mengajar benda tu. So dia bertanya, Cik Mata, macam mana nak jadi Syariah Committee? Satu. Industri pula bertanya, Cik Mata, kat mana kami nak cari Syariah Committee baru? Sebab dia ada 9 years lab dan NAM dia tak boleh continue dah. Dua. Yang ketiga, kalau ada pun dia tak ada industry experience. So this is where we launch CSPI ni untuk pastikan fresh lecturers boleh masuk dalam industri, asas yang akan buat internship dalam industri. Kita make sure that dia ada on job rotation, kita make sure that dia boleh ada mentor-mentee, kita make sure that dia boleh attend Syariah Committee meeting. At the end of the day, dia boleh decide sama ada nak jadi Syariah Committee ke tak. Because takkan dia nak gantung leher dengan 7 years imprisonment dengan 25 million fine. So I think our CSPI can come under silver. Our CSA, CSP can come under gold, tapi atas sikit. Itu saja. But we can work it out. Okay. So I think we have to stop now for our second session. A lot on the talent, memang banyak lagi nak cakap, but I know that you have to go for your meeting dekat ministry. We stop for a while, then we come to the third session and you will give the final advice or summary of what takeaway for the session now. Alright. Welcome back to our last session, session 3, very asas podcast with the CEO of Yayasan Peneraju.
Dia dah berapa banyak episod dah asas podcast?
17.
Oh my god.
17.
Amazing.
17. We
Kajian juga you nak buat benda ni.
Tak, because to us, kita nak capture. Contohnya kita interview Allahyarham Cik Wan Rahim. Few months sebelum dia meninggal. So dia cerita that he is the first 3 Islamic banking trainer yang dapat diploma dekat Malaysia. Ada 3 orang aja buat diploma Islamic Finance dekat Cyprus. 3 orang. Dia yang under program Universiti Al-Azhar buat dekat Cyprus. Then we had Haji Rostam bercerita tentang macam mana Islamic banking started dekat Bank Negara. We have Dr. Nordin, pioneer in Islamic finance. We have Pak Mus. So we have these people, and now we have you to make sure that
Tak boleh lah. You
no,
put
no,
me
no,
in
no,
that kind
no,
of range.
no, no. I'm not
Kita, my God.
I'm not
aku
putting
ni
you in
budak
that.
lagi.
Yeah, I'm not putting you in that league. But you have your role.
Itu Champions League.
Itu
Kita
Champions
main
League.
amateur league.
Kita semua league kita raih kan. But to us, you come in because your role to support because you have the passion on talent development. So for this last session, can you give us a takeaway note to Asas member? We have about 700 members. 10% are outside Malaysia. In a lot of country, we have a colourful members walaupun nama Persatuan Penasihat Syariah. 51% of our members are Syariah officer. We have lecturer. We have, of course, almost all the Syariah committee member yang I mentioned tu adalah ahli asas. So your takeaway note to asas members.
I was married to a psychiatrist for 20 years, 19 years. I was asking her what is the definition of insanity, and this is coded in the DSM-5. Insanity is defined as your reality being different from other people's. So if I behave strangely and people in the studio and you don't think this is normal, I am the one.
Yeah.
But if all of us are behaving crazy, but all of us treat that as normal, that is our reality, that's also fine.
Yes.
So that is it's a simple definition. Is your reality the same as other people?
Correct.
Okay, why I started off with that? Because to address your question head on, nasihat saya adalah, you kena buat benda yang dramatic, benda yang agresif dan benda yang sangat-sangat penting untuk diri you.
Yeah.
If you don't feel that is important, don't do. If you think that is important, you do. I don't have to do.
Correct.
But whatever it is, if you believe that is the thing that must be done and it has to be done now and it has to be done by you, do it. Even though other people might be against it. Because that is the only way you can affect change. If you want to see different things that can be moving, you have to take that first step. Even if it's scary. But always not be delulu ataupun delusional. Always check around you. If I'm doing this, am I crazy or not?
Yeah.
This is way too outlandish. If kalau ada 2 kawan, 3 kawan cakap benda ni gila, don't change friend.
Okay.
Keep those friends. Stop. You better stop.
They are honest enough.
They are honest lah. Sebab, you know, I mean, a true friend is the only one that will call you crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, kalau
First timer
ni dia whatever you want to do lah kan. Aku bukan kenal kau kan.
Yeah.
So, always match that two expectations. You want change. You have to do drastic things. But make sure that you have sanity check. Always sanity check.
Okay.
Because kadang-kadang that's how you become a dictator. I mean, Hitler thought he was doing change, but nobody told him that this is wrong. So dia jalan lah, jadilah Hitler. Tapi the Prophet did drastic changes. I mean, until now, I still think that he is the number one person that we all should look up to. If you separate the man and the religion, just look at him as a political leader. That's it. That's why, I mean, yelah kita baca kitab, kita ada Ihya Ulumuddin apa segala. Okay, fine. But then there is this book. I don't know whether you will agree with me on this one or not lah. There's this book by Leslie Hazelton that talks about the Prophet as if he's just a man. She a lot of caveat here. Number one, she's a Jew. Number two, she is atheist. And number three, she's a woman. So imagine, you know, the normal people here, female atheist Jew writing about my Nabi. I mean, that's already like, you know, a contestation. But take away that element. Just look at him as Muhammad bin Abdullah. Who is he as a person?
Yeah.
I don't worry about the Prophet part. Suddenly you realize this guy is greater than Jesus Christ, greater than Julius Caesar, greater than Genghis Khan, greater than all the names that you can think of.
Whatever.
Yeah, because dia political leader first. And the way dia buat movement is so structured. And the best part is he makes mistakes.
Yeah, of course.
sampai kita boleh learn from those mistakes. And so he's not a miracle guy yang dia
Super
boleh
perfect.
super perfect. He's not perfect. And the trial and error. Kita pun tahu sejarah dia, kita
Kena
tahu
tegur
sirah
dalam
dia.
Al-Quran, kena tegur dengan
Kena
sahabat.
tegur sahabat, kena tegur Quran, kena tegur you know, and then isteri dia kena tegur, and then dia ada dia punya own wishes and apa nama, and fears and anxiety and all this other stuff, right? It is quite humbling to see the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as Muhammad bin Abdullah. And why I brought this up is because he wanted change and he did drastic things, and his sahabat kept him in check all the time.
Yes.
Oh, you nak buat ni gila, stop.
Bukan tak berani tegur pun tegur.
Tegur. Orang lagi orang Arab, lagi orang mana kira apa, kau Nabi kau apa, kau sound je kau. Itu, that takes guts, you know.
Yeah.
And then you have generals like Khalid Al-Walid, and you have thinkers like Umar, you have administrators like Abu Bakar, you have all these people, and you have slaves like Bilal. You have all this myriad of companions, and then that is also indicative. So bila you surround yourself dengan one type of ni, you're not really living the life of the Prophet, are you?
Careful lah.
You kena ada semua. You kena ada Bilal, you kena ada Abu Bakar, you kena ada orang jahat juga dalam dia punya group kan.
Yeah.
And then you kena ada orang gila, and then he made friends with enemies. Abu Sufyan was the mayor of Mecca. He was not a Muslim until there was a bala tentera in front of Mecca in the Prophet's final Umrah.
Yeah.
Baru dia peluk Islam.
Yeah.
You don't think of Abu Sufyan as kafir, no, but he was all the way till the end. Bila dah tak boleh nak lawan, dia masuk.
Yeah.
And true enough, anak dia pun jadi somebody.
Yeah.
After the
Muawiyah.
Right? So, and all of them have mission, all of them have objectives, and all of them have a challenge that they need to overcome personally. I mean, Sayyidina Ali, that is the most challenging personal challenges that he has to overcome among all the Prophet. We know this. This is not new to us. But when you translate this back to your life, if you bangun pagi kerja balik, bangun pagi kerja balik, bangun pagi kerja balik, you're not pushing yourself.
Yeah.
Why? Takut? Then don't complain. Sebab if you start to complain, but you don't take risks. Calculated risk is fine.
A passenger, not even.
That's the word. Thank you, Cik Mata, for bringing this up. Sebab in my meetings dekat Yayasan Penaju, I kick out people sebab I cakap you're a passenger.
Allah.
You're not contributing to this meeting. And mostly this is directed to the bosses. The junior staff, sebab junior staff dia macam-macam idea dia nak. And dia rimas sebab dia punya manager, dia punya senior manager semua macam put him or her down. So I cakap I'd rather talk to you rather than the managers. Sebab you are the person with the ideas. Biar the managers execute. Yeah. Now Yayasan Penaju internally, there's a lot of drivers that nobody should be in the meeting if they are passenger. Get out. Itu point dia. Jadi the main idea here is, if you want to affect change, take risks.
Okay. But
have people to check you.
Yeah.
Sebab sometimes your changes can be too drastic and dramatic. It might be considered as insanity.
Yeah.
And that might not be good for anybody.
All right. Okay. We want to have more time with him. We want to have more time with you, Ibrahim. But inshallah, this is not the last one. This is just the beginning of more podcast session with Encik Ibrahim Sani, CEO of Yayasan Peneraju. I know that he have to rush for a meeting in Putrajaya, all the way from Publica to Putrajaya. Inshallah, Allah is his way.
This is a very nice office.
Yeah, inshallah.
And very nice studio. I'm very impressed with the studio.
Welcome. You can bring your people, bring your guests or whatever for a session. We will work together with Yayasan Peneraju.
Nice.
Inshallah. So thank you very much, Encik Ibrahim. Thank you
very much
for all the listeners. InsyaAllah Ramadan Karim. May Allah bless us, guide us. Allah beri rezeki kita untuk mendapat Lailatul Qadar this year. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Thank you.
Alright. Thank you.